I thought I was careful. I was wrong. The documents laid out their deception like a diagram of a car crash. Cold, mechanical, undeniable. My name is Erwin Keller, and I'm 37 years old. I live in a small apartment now, just me and my daughter Maddie on the weekends. Becca Keller, my ex-wife, didn't just have an affair with Victor Harland. She let him dissect our marriage while they plotted to take everything from me, including my company idea. My shoulders still tense when I remember believing we were building a life together for our daughter Maddie, unaware of the betrayal growing under my own roof. I built Roadline in shadows, documented every move they made, and waited. Not for revenge, but consequences. For anyone who's been mocked and underestimated, know this. Justice comes to those who refuse to be victims. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I remember that night like you remember the moment before a car crash, every detail preserved in perfect, terrible clarity. It was a Tuesday in April, nearly 8 at night when I finally got home. The garage had been slammed with 3 transmissions and a timing belt, and my hands were still dark with grease despite scrubbing them raw in the shop sink. Our kitchen was bright, too bright, like someone had replaced all the bulbs with something harsher. Becca sat at the counter island, phone in hand, scrolling with that half-smile she got when something amused her. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys in the wooden bowl by the door. The sound echoed in the silence. "Sorry I'm late. Johnson's Camaro needed more work than I thought." She hummed something non-committal, still not looking up. I washed my hands again at the kitchen sink, scrubbing at the black lines that never fully disappeared from my fingernails. "Where's Maddie?" I asked, drying my hands on the dish towel. "Asleep. 2 hours ago." Her tone had that edge, that little slice of accusation. I nodded, swallowing the guilt. Nights at the garage paid the bills, but they cost me time with my daughter. That's why I'd made my decision. That's why tonight mattered. I pulled out a chair across from her and sat down heavily. "Becca, I need to talk to you about something important." She finally looked up, eyebrows raised slightly. "What's wrong now?" "Nothing's wrong. The opposite, actually." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my notebook, dog-eared, oil-stained, but filled with something I believed in. "I'm ready to take the leap with Roadline." Her eyes flicked to the notebook, then back to me, unimpressed. "I've got the prototype sketched out," I continued, opening to the pages where I'd mapped everything. The mobile diagnostic platform could revolutionize how small shops compete with dealerships. "Orlando thinks..." "Orlando?" She cut me off with a laugh. "Your buddy from the garage? That's your business advisor?" I pressed on. "He knows coding, Becca. He's helped me build the framework. I'm talking about quitting night shifts, focusing on this full-time. We could finally have the life we talked about." That's when she laughed. Not a nervous laugh or even a skeptical one. It was cruel, dismissive, like I'd told a joke that wasn't even worth the courtesy of pretending it was funny. "Victor says a real plan needs real money," she said, setting her phone down with a deliberate slowness. "You're not that guy, Erwin." Victor, her mentor. The wealthy investment fund manager she'd met through some charity thing 6 months ago. The knot in my stomach tightened. "Victor said that?" I asked quietly. "About my plan? When exactly did you show him my plans?" Her eyes widened just a fraction, caught, before narrowing defensively. "He mentors lots of people with business ideas. I wanted a professional opinion." "I never gave you this notebook to share," I said, my voice tight. "These are my designs, my work." She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive. Victor says that's why you'll never make it in business. Real men with real money understand how to take criticism." The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Real men. Real money. Everything crystallized in that moment. The late nights she'd been networking, the new clothes, the sudden interest in investment strategies. I saw the contempt in her eyes, so clear it might as well have been written there. "How long have you been sleeping with him?" I asked, the words burning my throat on the way out. Her face flushed red, then drained of color. "That's ridiculous, you're paranoid." But she didn't look shocked, Just caught. And that told me everything. I closed my notebook and stood up. I'm taking my ridiculous paranoid self to Janine's tonight. Tell Maddie I'll see her tomorrow. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. But I was already walking out, grabbing only my keys, wallet, and the notebook she'd betrayed. I slept on Janine's couch that night, staring at water stains on her ceiling until dawn broke. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of falling. The next morning, Maddie sat across from me at Janine's kitchen table, spooning cereal into her mouth while I sketched improvements to Roadline's interface. Her 7-year-old eyes watched my pencil move across the paper. "Is that your car computer thing?" she asked, milk dribbling down her chin. "Yeah, sweetheart." I smiled, passing her a napkin. "It helps mechanics tell people exactly what's wrong with their cars. So they don't get tricked?" "Exactly. Even kids understood the value of trust." My phone buzzed with a text from Becca. "We need to talk like adults, tonight at Vino's, 7 p.m. Victor will be there. Let's be civil." I stared at the screen, then at my daughter's innocent face. I knew what this civil talk would be, an ambush carefully staged in public so I couldn't make a scene. Fine. I had something to bring too. I'd found the hotel receipts, the text logs, everything. That evening, I walked toward Vino's wine bar, evidence folded in my pocket, heart pounding like a misfiring engine. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't be the only one exposed. Vino's was one of those midtown wine bars with exposed brick walls and prices that made me wince. The kind of place where people who called themselves discerning ordered glasses that cost more than I spent on dinner for 3. They were already seated when I arrived. Perfect tableau. Becca in a cream blouse I'd never seen before. Victor in what was probably a $1,000 suit, both of them with half-empty wine glasses. Playing house with my life. "Erwin." Victor stood and extended his hand like we were colleagues at a conference. "Good of you to come. Please sit." I ignored his hand and took the empty chair. No point pretending this was friendly. "I ordered you a beer," Becca said, sliding a glass toward me. "Your usual." My usual. Like she still knew me, still had the right to that knowledge. I left it untouched. Victor cleared his throat. "Erwin, I know this situation is difficult, but I think we can all behave like adults." His voice had that practiced smoothness of someone used to talking people into things. "I've taken the liberty of reviewing your app idea." "Roadline isn't an app," I corrected. "It's a diagnostic platform with hardware integration." He smiled, the kind of smile adults give children who say something cute but wrong. "As I was saying, your app is cute, but risky. Very risky. Becca needs stability right now." The dismissal in his tone made my jaw tighten. "Stability?" I asked, meeting his gaze directly. "Or the illusion of it?" Becca leaned forward, her eyes flashing with irritation. "You never finish anything, Erwin. That's your pattern. Start big, talk big, then back to the garage when it gets hard." She softened her voice, practiced sympathy. "Victor sees potential in me. He says I could manage his foundation. You should be grateful he's being kind." Kind. The word struck a match inside me. "Kind is not sleeping with my wife while critiquing my business plan," I said, pulling the hotel receipts and printed text logs from my pocket and placing them on the table. Her eyes widened. Victor went pale, his composed facade cracking. "Where did you get those?" Becca hissed. "Does it matter? Our phone plan is joint. The emails came to our shared computer. You weren't exactly careful." I turned to Victor. $400 bottles of wine at the Westin. Quite the mentor-mentee relationship. Victor recovered quickly, adjusting his tie. "Let's not get emotional. These things happen in marriages. The question is how we move forward." He lowered his voice to what he probably thought was reasonable. "Let's be adults. File amicably. Sign over any claim to this Roadline idea as a marital asset. I'll even help you find work." The audacity made heat crawl up my neck. "Let me get this straight. You want my idea. You want my kid halftime, and you want me to say thank you?" Becca slapped her hand on the table. "You're being selfish. Maddie needs a man with resources, a future, security." I matched her energy, leaning in. "Then explain to me why the man with resources needs my notebook to sleep at night." That hit a nerve. Victor's jaw twitched. "You're being unreasonable," Becca said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. "These are reasonable terms. Primary custody with me, of course, with standard visitation for you. Roadline is listed as community property developed during the marriage." I flipped through the papers, rage building with each page. They'd prepared this in advance, positioning themselves to take everything: my daughter, my idea, my future. "And no spousal support," she added as if that was some generous concession. "Since I'll have other arrangements." My fingers tightened on the papers. I looked up at them sitting there, so smug, so certain they'd calculated everything perfectly. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd shown me exactly who they were before asking me to sign anything. "I'll have my lawyer review these," I said, folding the papers and putting them in my pocket alongside the evidence of their affair. Their confident expressions faltered. They'd expected capitulation, not this calm defiance. "Don't make this messy, Irwin," Victor warned. "It won't end well for you." The threat hung in the air, but something had shifted. The exposure of their affair had given me leverage. No judge would grant Becca spousal support now. This wasn't a settlement discussion. It was a declaration of war. The next morning, I stood in a one-car garage behind Mac's Auto Body, clutching a duffel bag of clothes and my box of Roadline materials. Mac had offered the space when he heard about the divorce, said he owed me after I'd rebuilt his transmission last winter at cost. The concrete floor was oil-stained, and the walls needed paint, but it had a bathroom, electricity, and enough space for a cot. "It's not much," I muttered to myself, dropping the duffel on a workbench. The space smelled like motor oil and metal, familiar scents that had always meant work and purpose to me. I breathed it in, letting it steady me. I'd spent my life fixing broken things. Now I needed to fix my life. I unfolded the cot, set up a card table with my laptop, and arranged my tools on the workbench. By noon, I'd converted half the garage into living quarters and the other half into Roadline's first official workshop. The door creaked open around 6. Janine stood there with Maddie, both carrying containers. "Dinner delivery," Janine announced, setting down a casserole dish. "And the artist brought supplies." Maddie raced over with her backpack. "Daddy, I brought my crayons. Can I color while you work?" I lifted her up, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Absolutely, Pumpkin. You can be my design consultant." Janine surveyed the space with hands on her hips. "Well, it's cleaner than your college apartment, at least." She started unpacking the food. "Lasagna. And I brought real plates because I know you'd eat straight from the pan." I smiled for what felt like the first time in days. "Thanks, Janine." She nodded, understanding everything I couldn't say. That night, after Maddie went back to Janine's for bed, Orlando showed up with a box of circuit boards and a determined expression. "Heard you finally left her," he said, dropping the box on the workbench. "About time, man." "Yeah," I sighed, opening the box. "You didn't have to bring all this." Orlando rolled up his sleeves. "Roadline needs hardware, right? I've been saving these components, figured we could start the prototype tonight." "We?" I asked. "Partners," he said simply. 50-50. I code, you design, we both build." I swallowed hard. "I can't pay you." "Then we both work for free until we can." He grabbed a soldering iron. "Now show me these schematics you've been hiding." We worked until 3 a.m., the small space filled with the smell of hot solder and the quiet focus of two men building something from nothing. 3 days later, Alicia Park appeared at the garage door in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She handed me a thick envelope with a practiced smile. "Discovery requests, Mr. Keller. We'll need all your financial records, business plans, and anything related to Roadline's development." I took the envelope. Figured this was coming. Her smile tightened. "Ms. Keller has a strong claim to Roadline as marital property. This doesn't need to be contentious." "But it already is," I replied, opening a drawer in my workbench. I pulled out a binder filled with dated notes, sketches, and component lists, all with timestamps and notarized dates. I've been documenting Roadline for 3 years, mailed copies to myself monthly, unopened, postmarked. My lawyer has the duplicates. The confident gleam in her eyes faltered momentarily. "We'll see you in court, Mr. Keller." She turned on her heel, the click of her shoes echoing as she left. When the preliminary hearing came a week later, I sat with my court-appointed lawyer while Becca and Alicia presented their case for temporary spousal support. Becca wore an expression of practiced vulnerability, describing how she'd supported my dreams while I tinkered in the garage. The judge, a stone-faced woman in her 60s, turned to me. "Mr. Keller, your response?" My lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we contest spousal support on grounds of adultery." He presented the hotel receipts, text messages, and credit card statements showing Becca's ongoing relationship with Victor. Becca's face drained of color. Alicia whispered urgently to her. The judge reviewed the evidence, her expression unchanged. Support petition denied. Next hearing in 30 days to address custody and property division. Outside the courtroom, Becca hissed, "You'll regret this," before Alicia pulled her away. That evening, Janine and I sat at her kitchen table, Maddie asleep upstairs. "She really thought you'd just roll over," Janine said, shaking her head. I stared into my coffee. "She doesn't know me anymore. No spousal support means Victor's bankrolling her now," Janine pointed out with a satisfied smirk. "Let's see how long that lasts." The garage door banged open, and Orlando burst in, hair wild, eyes bright with excitement. "It works," he shouted, waving his laptop. "The prototype works. I got the diagnostic interface talking to the OBD port. Real-time data, just like you designed." He spun the laptop around, showing lines of code and a simple interface with numbers flowing across the screen. "First real step," I said, a genuine smile breaking across my face. "Roadline is actually happening." The next morning, Orlando and I loaded the prototype into my truck. It wasn't much to look at. A small metal box with wires that connected to a laptop. But it represented everything I'd been working toward. I felt a flutter of nerves as we pulled up to Max Auto Care, a small independent shop that had been in business for 30 years. "You sure he'll give us 5 minutes?" Orlando asked, carefully lifting our creation. Max old school. He answers his own phone and values his reputation more than anything. If we can show him this works, he'll listen. I'd met Mac 3 years earlier when I fixed his daughter's car after hours. He was a bear of a man with hands like baseball gloves and a voice that could cut through the noise of running engines. "Erwin Keller," he boomed as we walked in. "Thought you disappeared." "Almost did," I said, shaking his hand. "Got a few minutes? Want to show you something?" He glanced at the box in Orlando's arms. "That's supposed to impress me?" "Give us 10 minutes, I said. If you're not interested, we'll be out of your hair." Mac crossed his arms. 10 minutes. Clock's ticking. We set up at a workstation near a Honda with its hood up. Orlando connected our device to the car's diagnostic port while I pulled up the software. "Every customer thinks you're trying to rip them off," I explained. "They don't understand what's happening under the hood, and they don't trust mechanics." Mac grunted. "Tell me something I don't know. What if they could see exactly what you see? What if you could send them a link showing real-time diagnostics from their vehicle, with photographs and explanations in plain English?" The screen flickered to life, displaying the Honda's diagnostic codes translated into simple language, with stock photos of the relevant parts. "This is Roadline," I said. "Customer gets this on their phone, sees what you see, understands why they need the work. And when they get a second opinion, they see the same thing," Orlando added. "No more price shopping based on who they trust more." Mac leaned in closer. "How much setup time for my guys?" "Plug in, take a photo, add notes. 3 minutes tops." "Let me see it work on the Chevy over there," he said, pointing to a truck in the corner. "That one's giving us fits." We moved our equipment and repeated the process. Mac watched carefully as the system identified multiple issues, organizing them by urgency. "500 a month," Mac said abruptly. "I'll be your first customer." I blinked. "Just like that?" "Son, I lose 3 jobs a week to people who don't trust me. This pays for itself." He extended his hand. "When can you install it?" By the end of the week, we had Roadline running at Mac's shop. 2 weeks later, the owner of Precision Auto, who'd heard about it from Mac, signed on. Within a month, we had 5 shops using the system, all paying monthly subscriptions. We weren't rich, but we were making real money. I didn't realize Becca was paying attention until the court notice arrived. She was filing to relocate Maddie to Branford, a wealthy suburb 2 hours away, claiming better schools and stability with Victor. I couldn't sleep that night. The thought of Maddie being that far away, of seeing her only on occasional weekends, made my chest physically hurt. I called my lawyer at 6 in the morning. "We fight this," I told him. "Whatever it takes." The hearing came 3 weeks later. Becca sat beside Alicia, wearing a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Victor sat directly behind them, his expression smug. Alicia presented their case first. Victor's 8-bedroom house in an exclusive neighborhood, private school options, tennis lessons, and piano tutors. She painted my garage apartment as barely suitable for occasional visits. When my turn came, I presented evidence of my involvement in Maddie's life, her daily routine, her friends, her school where she'd just started first grade. I showed proof of Roadline's growing customer base and stability. My lawyer emphasized the psychological impact of separating a child from her father and familiar surroundings. "Mr. Keller has maintained consistent daily involvement despite difficult circumstances," he argued. Ms. Keller's relationship with Mr. Harland is relatively new in comparison to the child's established life here. The judge reviewed everything carefully. After what felt like hours, she looked up. "The court finds insufficient grounds for relocation. Joint physical custody will continue on a 50-50 basis, week on, week off. Mr. Keller will maintain residence within 20 miles of the child's current school district." Relief flooded through me so intensely I had to grip the table. Outside the courtroom, Becca approached, Victor hovering just behind her. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'm going to ruin you." Victor placed his hand on her shoulder, smirking. "You should have taken the deal when it was offered, Irwin. Now we'll take everything." I walked away without responding, my chest tight. The fight wasn't just about custody anymore. They wanted to destroy me completely. But with every step I took toward my truck, I felt my resolve strengthen. They'd underestimated me once. They were about to do it again. 18 months passed in a blur of code, client calls, and custody exchanges. What had started with 5 shops grew to over 300 across 12 states. Orlando had hired 2 developers to keep up with demand, and we'd moved from the garage to a real office downtown with actual desks and a coffee machine that didn't require kicking to work. Through it all, I kept my promise to Maddie. I never missed a school event, a doctor's appointment, or a bedtime story on my weeks. Even on Becca's weeks, I'd call every night at 8 o'clock sharp. Some nights she'd put Maddie on, other nights she'd forget, but I never stopped trying. I was sitting in the 3rd row of Brookside Elementary's auditorium on a Thursday evening in May, watching 7-year-olds perform This Land Is Your Land with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Maddie stood in the 2nd row, her chestnut hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, concentrating so hard on remembering the words that her little forehead creased. When she spotted me, her serious expression broke into a quick wave before she remembered she was supposed to be performing. Remember those moments when life feels perfectly balanced? That was one of mine. Sitting there watching my daughter sing, knowing that despite everything, we'd made it. She was happy. Roadline was growing. The worst was behind us. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. Maddie's performance came first. But when it buzzed 3 more times in quick succession, I slipped it out just enough to see Orlando's name flashing. After the performance, I hugged Maddie tight. "You were the best one up there," I whispered. "Dad, there were 26 kids, and you were the best. Fact." She giggled, then spotted her mother and Victor waiting by the door. "Mom's here. See you Sunday for pancakes?" "With extra chocolate chips," I promised, watching her skip away. Once she was gone, I called Orlando back. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice strained with excitement. "Just leaving Maddie's recital." "What's going on?" "Get to the office now." "It's happening." "What's happening?" "Milepost. They want Roadline. All of it." My heart stuttered. Milepost Auto Network was the largest chain of diagnostic centers in the country. We'd pitched them 6 months ago, but they'd said we were too small. "What are they offering?" I asked, climbing into my truck. $28.5 million, Irwin. Cash and stock. They want you to stay on as division head. The road blurred. I pulled over, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. "Say that number again," I whispered. $28.5 million. I'm looking at the term sheet right now. 5 years of 18-hour days. 5 years of cheap takeout and falling asleep at my keyboard. 5 years of Becca's mockery and Victor's threats. All for this moment. I'll be there in 15. I drove to the office in a daze. Orlando was waiting in the parking lot, waving a manila envelope. He yanked open my door before I'd even killed the engine. "Here," he said, thrusting the papers at me. "Read it." I scanned the term sheet, my eyes catching on the numbers. $28.5 million acquisition. Executive retention packages. Integration timeline. "Is this real?" I asked, my voice cracking. "It's real," Orlando confirmed, his face split in a wide grin. "We did it, man." Something broke loose inside me then. All the nights I'd lain awake wondering if I was a fool. All the times I'd watched Maddie go off with Becca and Victor to their big house with the swimming pool while I returned to my one-bedroom apartment. All the doubt and fear and rage I'd swallowed. I dropped my head to the steering wheel and wept. Orlando's hand landed on my shoulder, steady and warm. "We earned this," he said quietly. Eventually, I pulled myself together. We sat in my truck for another hour, reading through the offer line by line, plotting our next steps, occasionally breaking into spontaneous laughter or disbelieving headshakes. When I finally drove home, I clutched the term sheet in one hand, keeping it on my lap like it might disappear if I let go. I fell asleep that night with the papers on my nightstand, waking every few hours to check that they were still there. The next morning, a sharp knock on my door pulled me from sleep. I stumbled to answer it, finding a courier with an envelope. "Erwin Keller?" he asked. "That's me." "Legal documents. Signature required." I signed, took the envelope, and closed the door. The return address was from Victor's attorney. My stomach tightened as I tore it open and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Temporary injunction," the top page read in bold letters. As I scanned further, the words blurred together. Marital asset, intellectual property, contribution of ideas and financial support, preliminary ownership claim. Victor's lawyers were filing for an emergency injunction to block the sale of Roadline, claiming that Becca had contributed to its development during our marriage and that Victor had provided critical business guidance and financial considerations. The papers slipped from my fingers, scattering across the floor. The room seemed to tilt sideways. All I could think was, they're going to take it. After everything, they're going to take it away. I sat on my kitchen floor for nearly an hour, the injunction papers scattered around me like confetti after the world's worst party. My phone buzzed repeatedly, Orlando, then Milepost's attorney, then Orlando again. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Everything we'd built, everything I'd sacrificed for was balanced on a knife's edge. And Victor's hand was on the hilt, ready to push. When my doorbell rang, I almost didn't answer. But the pounding that followed was unmistakably Janine's. 3 sharp raps, then 2 quick ones. Our childhood signal. I pulled myself up and opened the door. One look at my face and she pushed past me, surveying the papers on the floor. "Orlando called me," she said, bending to gather the documents. "Said you weren't answering your phone." "They're trying to take it all," I said, my voice hollow. "They're saying Becca contributed to Roadline, that Victor provided guidance. It's all lies." Janine straightened, the papers clutched in her hand. "Did you shower today?" "What?" "Did you shower, eat, change your clothes?" I stared at her. "I'm losing everything and you're asking about my hygiene?" "I'm asking because you look like shit and feeling like shit makes you think like shit." She dropped the papers on the counter and opened my refrigerator. "You documented everything, Erwin. From day one. You have the notebooks, the code commits, the prototype photos. They're the ones drowning, not you." She pulled out eggs and bread, moving around my kitchen like she owned it. The familiar sound of her cracking eggs into a pan brought me back to when we were kids, and she'd make midnight omelets after Dad's late shifts. "They have money," I said, slumping at the table. "They have expensive lawyers. And you have the truth." She slid a plate in front of me. "Eat, then shower, then we fight." I ate mechanically while Janine called Orlando. She put him on speaker. "Tell him what you found," she said. Orlando's voice crackled through. I've been digging through everything we know about Victor's fund. Something isn't adding up with their finances. Those trips to Cabo last year? The ones Becca posted all over Instagram? Victor charged them to his company card. I found the receipts in public filings. I sat up straighter. What does that mean? It means he's been using investor money to fund their affair. And that's just what I found in a couple hours. If we hire a forensic accountant, we can prove fraud, I finished, the fog in my head starting to clear. Exactly, Janine said, squeezing my shoulder. Your betrayal just became their legal problem. That night, after a shower and 3 cups of coffee, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I started a video recording, something I'd done periodically since the divorce began, a diary of sorts. It's April 18th, 10:42 p.m., I began, staring directly into the camera. They filed an injunction today. They want to steal Roadline. After everything, after the affair, after trying to take Maddie away, they want the one thing I built from nothing. I ran a hand through my hair. I won't let them. I've got the notebooks, the code repositories, the emails. I've got proof this was mine from the beginning. I leaned closer to the camera. They thought I was the same guy they could laugh at in that kitchen 5 years ago. They were wrong. I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not backing down. They picked this fight. Now they'll see it through to the end. Just as I finished recording, my phone buzzed with a text from Becca. We can fix this, Erwin. Stop fighting and we can work something out. For Maddie's sake. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping me. 5 years of mockery. And now she wanted to fix this? Now that there was money on the table? Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Orlando, breathless and wild-eyed, clutching a manila folder. You're not going to believe what I found, he said, pushing past me into the apartment. He slapped the folder on the table and spread out a series of documents, presentation slides, meeting minutes, emails. What is this? I asked, scanning the papers. Victor pitched Roadline to Auto Partners last year, Orlando said, tapping a particular slide. Look at the date, 3 months after we filed our first patent. And look at the system architecture. He pointed to a diagram that was unmistakably ours, right down to the color scheme I'd used in our original sketches. He tried to sell our technology, I said, disbelief giving way to rage. Worse. He told them he'd developed it. I got these from a contact at Auto Partners who remembered our demo and recognized the system when he saw Victor's pitch. Orlando's eyes were bright with vindication. He didn't just steal your wife, Erwin. He stole your intellectual property and tried to profit from it. That's not just betrayal, that's corporate theft. I stared at the evidence, a slow, savage satisfaction building in my chest. We had them. The mediation room felt too small, with its polished conference table and generic landscape paintings designed to create calm. Instead, tension thickened the air. I sat across from Becca and Victor, with our lawyers flanking us like seconds in a duel. Alicia Park looked immaculate as always, her hair pulled into a severe bun, manila folders stacked neatly before her. My attorney, Graham Hewitt, a practical man with decades of experience, spread his notes with methodical precision. We appreciate everyone making time for this mediation, the facilitator began. Let's try to find common ground today. Victor snorted quietly. I caught his eye and held it until he looked away. Alicia spoke first, her voice smooth as polished stone. Our position is straightforward. Roadline was developed during Mr. and Mrs. Keller's marriage, making it community property. Beyond that, Mrs. Keller made significant contributions to its development. She slid papers forward. She provided financial support while Mr. Keller pursued this venture, managed their household, and even offered conceptual input. I couldn't help it, I laughed. One short, disbelieving bark. Something funny, Mr. Keller? Alicia asked, her eyebrow arching. Yeah, actually. I leaned forward. Let's talk about Becca's conceptual input. I nodded to Graham, who produced a folder of his own. Emails between Mr. and Mrs. Keller, Graham explained, passing copies around. Dated throughout the period when Roadline was being developed. The mediator accepted a copy, scanning it as Alicia did the same. I've highlighted the relevant sections, I said. March 2nd, where Becca calls my work techno-ramble that will never amount to anything. April 16th, where she says she's tired of hearing about a pipe dream. June 28th, where she tells me to stop wasting time in that garage and get a real job. I looked directly at Becca. Doesn't sound like someone making contributions. Sounds like someone actively discouraging the project. Becca's cheeks flushed. She whispered something to Alicia, who nodded. Mrs. Keller's honest assessment of business risks doesn't negate her support, Alicia countered. And Mr. Harlan provided valuable mentorship. About that, I interrupted. Orlando, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stepped forward with his own folder. He placed photos of presentation slides on the table. These are from a pitch Victor Harlan made to Auto Partners Distribution last year, Orlando explained. You'll notice the system architecture is identical to Roadline's. Same interface, same back-end structure. He placed another document beside it. And here's a statement from Drew Mackey, purchasing director at Auto Partners, confirming that Mr. Harlan presented this as his own technology. The room went still. Victor shifted in his seat, his face hardening. This is preposterous, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Orlando wasn't finished. I also have financial records showing Mr. Harlan used his investment fund's credit cards to finance trips with Mrs. Keller. Cabo San Lucas, the Four Seasons in Maui, a weekend at Blackberry Farm. All while they were having an affair, all charged to his company. I watched Victor's face drain of color. You think this is just about divorce now? I asked quietly. You used investor funds for your affair. You tried to steal intellectual property. If this goes to court, you're finished. Not just with Roadline, with everything. Victor leaned forward, desperation edging into his voice. You'll burn your milepost deal if you push this. I matched his posture, keeping my voice steady. No. You burned your fund. I'm just here to sweep the ashes. The mediator cleared his throat. Perhaps the parties would benefit from separate discussions. We broke into different conference rooms. An hour passed with lawyers shuttling back and forth. Finally, Graham returned with a tight smile. They're backing down, he said. Completely. When we reconvened, the change was striking. Victor sat stiffly, his jaw working. Alicia had lost her polished confidence, her complexion noticeably pale. My clients have reassessed their position, she began, her voice lacking its earlier authority. In the interest of resolution, we're prepared to settle on the following terms. She hesitated, glancing at Victor and Becca before continuing. No ownership claim to Roadline, no proceeds from any sale, Mr. Keller's legal fees to be reimbursed in full. She swallowed. And custody remains at the current 50-50 arrangement. Graham looked at me. That's everything we asked for. I nodded slowly, taking in Becca's stunned expression and Victor's barely contained rage. 5 years of fighting, and it ended not with a bang, but with Alicia Park's quiet capitulation. We accept, I said simply. The mediator smiled with relief. I'll draw up the formal settlement. If everyone agrees, we can close this today. As paperwork was prepared, Victor leaned across the table, his voice a strained whisper. You think you've won? This isn't over. I looked at him calmly. Actually, Victor, that's exactly what it is. Over. I signed my name on the last page of the settlement with steady hands. No more fighting, no more threats. The mediator collected all the copies, nodding with professional satisfaction. Congratulations, Mr. Keller, he said. This matter is officially resolved. Graham shook my hand as we walked out of the building, the afternoon sun bright after hours under fluorescent lights. I'll call Milepost right away. With the legal cloud lifted, they should be ready to move forward. Orlando was waiting by my truck, leaning against the passenger door with his arms crossed. One look at my face told him everything. We won? He asked, straightening. We won, I confirmed. Clean sweep. They get nothing. He let out a whoop that turned heads in the parking lot. I couldn't help but laugh, a real laugh that started somewhere deep in my chest. 5 years of knots began to untangle inside me. Call Milepost, I told him. Tell them the injunction's being withdrawn. The deal's back on. 2 weeks later, I sat in a sleek conference room downtown, pen hovering over the final contract. $31.2 million. More than I'd even dared hope for when we started negotiating. The Milepost CEO smiled across the table. You've built something special here, Irwin, she said. We're excited to take it nationwide. I signed my name, and just like that, the company born in a borrowed garage belonged to someone else. The weight that lifted off my shoulders nearly made me dizzy. Orlando and I walked out together, silent until we reached the street. "So," he said, "what happens now?" I stopped and turned to him. "Now you're officially their CTO, and I'm staying on as CEO through integration. After that," I shrugged. "I haven't thought that far ahead." Orlando's eyes were bright. "We did it, man. We actually did it." "We did," I agreed and pulled him into a hug. 5 years of late nights, cold pizza, and makeshift solutions had brought us here. His laugh rumbled against my shoulder. "Remember when the first prototype caught fire?" he asked. "And you threw your coffee on it?" I pulled back, grinning. That's when I knew we'd make it. That night I picked Maddie up from Janine's with a surprise strapped to my car roof. Her eyes went wide when she saw the gleaming purple bicycle. "Is that for me?" she gasped, rushing forward to run her hand along the handlebars. "All yours, sweetheart." I helped her adjust the helmet. "Want to try it out?" We spent an hour in Janine's driveway, me jogging beside her as she wobbled, then steadied, then finally rode on her own. Her laughter floated back to me as she made her first solo circle. Later, as I tucked her into bed in our small apartment, she asked, "Are we rich now, Daddy?" I smoothed her hair back. "We're secure now. That means we don't have to worry so much anymore. Can we get a bigger place? With a yard for my bike?" "Yes," I promised. "We can start looking this weekend." After she fell asleep, I sat on my couch, scrolling through news on my phone. A headline caught my eye. "Harland Fund under investigation. Investors flee amid fraud allegations." I clicked through to read that Victor's investment company was collapsing, as clients withdrew their money following reports of misappropriated funds. The article mentioned personal expenses that had triggered an SEC investigation. I set my phone down, feeling nothing but a distant satisfaction. Justice didn't need my help anymore. It was handling things on its own. 3 days later, rain drummed against my windows as I reviewed house listings. The knock on my door was so soft I almost missed it. When I opened it, Becca stood there, water dripping from her coat. A designer trench that had once been the envy of her friends but now looked worn at the edges. She'd clearly been crying, her mascara slightly smudged despite her attempts to fix it. The confident woman who'd once mocked my dreams was gone, replaced by someone who looked smaller somehow. Diminished. "Erwin," she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I stood frozen in the doorway, the rain pattering behind her. For a heartbeat, I almost let her in, some old reflex from the years we'd spent together. Then I remembered the contempt in her eyes that night in our kitchen, the sting of her betrayal, the years of fighting just to stay afloat. "Maybe we rushed things," Becca whispered, her voice catching. "Maybe we could try again?" I've been thinking about us, about the good times. The desperation in her eyes told me everything. Victor was gone, the fund was done, and now she needed somewhere to land. "Becca," I cut her off, my voice firm but not cruel. "You chose him. You chose that life. Now you live with that choice." I took a small step back from the doorway. "The only thing we share is Maddie's calendar." Her face crumpled. "You don't understand," she said, tears spilling now. "Victor left me, everything's gone, the condo, the vacations, all of it. I'm temping at a dental office and living in a studio apartment." I felt a flicker of pity, but not enough to change course. She hadn't come because she loved me, she'd come because she needed a lifeline. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said, meaning it. "But that doesn't change anything between us." "I have nothing," she whispered, mascara running down her cheeks. "Nothing left." "You have Maddie," I reminded her, "and a chance to rebuild. That's more than you left me with." Her shoulders slumped as she realized I wasn't going to invite her in, wasn't going to rescue her. The rain seemed to fall harder, dripping from her expensive coat, probably the last vestige of her life with Victor. "Good night, Becca," I said quietly and closed the door. I leaned against it, listening to her footsteps retreat down the hallway. There was no satisfaction in her pain, just the certainty that closing that door was the right thing to do. Some bridges stay burned. The next morning, I stood at the stove making pancakes when Maddie padded into the kitchen in her pajamas. hair mussed from sleep. "Can we make faces on them?" she asked, climbing onto a stool at the counter. "Absolutely." I reached for the blueberries in the fridge. "What kind of face are you thinking? Happy? Silly? Surprised?" "A happy face," she decided. "Like us." I smiled, arranging berries into a wide grin on her pancake. "Like us," I agreed. As we ate, sunshine streamed through the windows of our new house, a modest 3-bedroom with the yard Maddie had wanted for her bike. Nothing extravagant, but all ours, paid for in full. No mortgage, no debt hanging over us. "Dad?" Maddie asked, syrup on her chin. "Is Mom okay? She seemed sad when she dropped me off yesterday." My heart tightened. "Your mom's going through some changes," I said carefully. "But she loves you very much and she'll be okay." Maddie nodded, accepting this with the simple trust of childhood. "Can we ride bikes after breakfast?" "You bet." That evening, we drove to Janine's for our usual Sunday dinner. My sister opened the door, the smell of pot roast wafting past her. "Finally," she exclaimed. "I thought you two got lost." "Sorry," I said, holding up a paper bag. Had to make a stop. Inside, Orlando was already seated at the table laughing at something Janine had said. His presence at these dinners had become normal over the years. He was family now, bound by more than just business. "What's in the bag?" Janine asked as we settled in. I pulled out a bottle of champagne, not the most expensive kind, but decent. "I thought we'd celebrate properly." "Look at you," Janine teased. Big spender now. When I reached for my wallet to pay for dinner, something I'd never been able to do during the lean years, Janine tried to wave me off. But I insisted, smiling as I handed her the money. "Let me," I said. "You've carried us long enough." Orlando raised his glass. "To Erwin, who never quit." "To all of us," I corrected, looking around the table at the people who'd stood by me. As we ate, I watched Maddie laughing with Janine, Orlando telling one of his ridiculous jokes, and felt something settle in my chest. Justice hadn't arrived with a bang or a dramatic confrontation. It had come quietly, 5 years later, in the form of a life rebuilt while theirs fell apart. I had protected my daughter. I had built Roadline into something valuable. And in the end, Becca and Victor had lost everything they'd betrayed me for. The company they mocked had made me free, while their choices had left them with nothing but regret. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.